Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting of the regular city council to order. Today is October 17th, 6 p.m. My mic is on. And if you would, Cindy, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Dennehy,
Here.
Councilmember Schmisher, Councilmember B. Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Stein,
Here.
Councilmember Tracy,
Here.
Councilmember Worthington,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick,
Here.
Mayor Smith, absent.
Test. I don't think our mics are working.
I don't think Mike's. I agree. You can't hardly hear.
Testing 1, 2, 3. There we go.
There we go.
Test. There we go.
Hearing aids in, you guys.
And it looks like is Justin Banks here? I don't think so. So we will proceed then to Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation. Thank you for that, council and citizens and staff. We do have one request to address council tonight. That's from Dave Williams. And if you'd like to come up and make sure your green light is on your mic. Oh, and you will have 3 minutes.
Well, let's see. I see no green light.
You're good. We can hear it.
Okay, good. My name is Dave Williams. I live here in town at 813 Bridge. Lived here for 40 years, been self-employed here in town, paid my taxes like a good person should, et cetera, et cetera. Some of that I'm sure went to Parks and Rec. I don't know how much, but some of it did. My request tonight is, and dealing with my other senior friends, we enjoy going up to the East Ridge Park up there, but we feel that being local people here, being senior citizens and paid our dues already, we should not have to pay full $20 to get in. We go up, I have a little tiny camper. I don't use any of the facilities up there, the water, the toilets, the fire rings, anything. We sit there and my wife and I go up once every couple of 3 weeks and we play cards. That's it. So I'm 74 years old. It's getting hard to pay the bills. I'm still working in order to do that. So $20 seems excessive for us. I know it's cheaper than some campgrounds, but we don't go to those campgrounds either. We also understand why the charges put on there. I agree 100% with that. I don't have any problem with a charge. I just think that $20 is too much. Even the Royal Gorge is a city park, so-called. Once a year, we are allowed to get a discount ticket from up there for the yearly ticket. We consider that campground a city park. So we don't necessarily feel like we should have to pay to go to a city park. Let's see if there's anything else on here without stretching it out too far. I guess we're just afraid that Red Canyon Park will be the next charge going, and there's just no place for us seniors who cannot afford to leave town and go out on the road in our little rigs and go somewhere. Anything you can do to help us out, half price or $5 or $7 would be much appreciated. I appreciate your attention and look into it if you would for us. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Williams. We do appreciate you bringing that to council. Ryan, is that a matter of ordinance or is that just policy for the fees up there?
Rex, I don't recall if we actually put that in as a resolution, did we?
All either, but council did approve the $20 charge for camping.
Is that better? Yeah, like I said, council did approve that, the $20 charge. There was talk at the time of a much higher charge. We didn't think that with the amenities that we offer up there, that anything over $20 would be too much. And so we settled on that $20. You can look at any campground anywhere else in the state or the nation, and that charge is going to be way, way more than $20. So $20 is in my mind, a very fair price to camp there, but I do agree that we could possibly, do something for our locals. Maybe on the off-season basis, or, open it up for a week for Fremont County residents. We could do something like that. I haven't had a heck of a lot of feedback over the charge. I've had a lot of people call and say, hey, I remember when this was free. And I said, yeah, it does. But I try to explain to them that, when it was a dispersed campground, it was kind of wide open to anybody that got there and found a place to camp. We've noticed since we started charging for camping at East Ridge Campground that I'll just call it less than desirable clientele has disappeared from that. We've had nothing but great success so far in the first 2 years that we've had that campground open as a paid facility. It is, and like I say, that element that we didn't desire has vanished from that park. And I think the fee and the structure that we have now, we employ a campground host. I think that's the reason. That's the reason that we don't have that undesirable element there anymore. But I would totally agree. I was born and raised here. We always camp there for free. But I agree with what the speaker said, that maybe we could do something, along the lines of a discount for Fremont County residents, maybe, take a certain week or two out of the year that, there's a discounted rate or possibly free.
Sure. Thank you for that, Rex. Emily?
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. I too agree. It's a great facility. I went camping one night earlier it must have been early summer. I went camping up there, and it's really wonderful what the city has done to improve that. Do you happen to know offhand, Parks Director Brady, were we pretty full all summer? Or do you happen to know just what the numbers look like?
It's been a really, really good year. And our trails obviously have put us on the map. So we
Right.
have visitors coming from everywhere. I mean, we actually cleaned out the Iron Ranger. We're trying to get away from the Iron Ranger and more to the reservation system.
Mhm.
But we've had people from many, many different countries staying there,
Mhm.
and all over the state and all over the nation. So obviously the word is out that, our trail system here in Fremont County is incredible, and they are coming.
I would be one that would be in favor of looking at something that we could do, whether it be a day or a week in the spring or fall. I don't know what it should look like, but something for locals, I think. It looks like Mr. Williams has another question. I don't know.
We do have other discussion, but
Okay.
Councilman Tim?
Thank you. Listening to Mr. Williams, I kind of agree with kind of what he said here. I think maybe at least go to half price for seniors, and set that age. There's a lot of seniors who have definitely, who travel a lot, but I think a lot of them who are based here don't get out very far, or they can't afford to go very far. And I think as a council in that, to look at especially here, because, we still are, our demographics here in town. I think it's something that we as council should look at and look at for our seniors in this community.
Thank you for that. Andrea?
I think that I agree with Tim, and it's a good idea. But on the other hand, we do have expenses, and it's helped us to be able to pay someone to be there and to look out for what goes on up there. So I'm not opposed to what Tim said, but there is a thing in place for the national parks where if you're over a certain age, you pay one price. Like I think it was 35 when we did it, and then you are free for life. But that would, and it wouldn't even have to be that. I mean, if you maybe pay 20 or 25 once,
You're
yeah.
talking about the senior
That, the
pass.
senior pass, yeah. And that would at least give the parks a kitty of, of sorts.
Yeah, and I will remind council that the proceeds from the campground go directly back to the Parks Department, and that's for maintenance, new trail construction,
Right.
and just park improvements in general. So that money is appreciated. I'll just give you an example. This week, in the last 7 days, the campground has taken in almost $1,600. So that's been, every week we're looking at that, even getting into the fall season, we're still holding strong at that. And that just helps our kitty tremendously in what we can do and what we can accomplish, not only on the trails, but in the parks in general. So, and logistically, it might be a challenge. There would certainly have to be some thought put towards, how are we going to do this with a senior discount? Is it for Fremont County residents only? When, would this take place? Is it, there'll be a lot of hurdles to clear, especially during there's a campground host from May until October. So that could help a lot, but after that, it's a first come, first served basis, and it's paid cash into an Iron Ranger, which, so logistically, it'll be kind of a challenge to do that, but I agree, we should look at some other option for our locals. And not only senior citizens, but groups that come there to, help us maintain trails. They shouldn't have to pay to camp. A few things like that we could look at. And we'll discuss a little later the commercial trail policy. But yeah, I agree. Our locals, those are the ones that we serve. And we could try to come up with something, but the logistics of it is going to be a challenge.
If I could make a suggestion, it seems to me, hearing comments from council, that this might be something that council could look at perhaps every year, perhaps biannually every other year during the budget process, where we receive a report on the past year's activity at the campground, and have a chance to talk about the rate structure and things like that. That might be, I know we have a budget meeting Wednesday, which is awfully short notice, and perhaps there's some other mechanism, but in the future, that might be a good thing for council to be involved in. So, Mr. Williams, we did hear you, and what sounds like we're going to be taking some action here, and stay tuned. Sure.
I appreciate what the Parks and Recs is bringing up. I appreciate that the fact that the money goes back into the park. We usually don't go up during the busy season where the money's rolling in. We usually go up between October and March or April, where there's very few people up there. And so to some extent, I would think that the city would appreciate some locals up there keeping an eye on it during those off season. 1 or 2 weeks a year doesn't do it, but I do appreciate the fact that you've mentioned maybe a X amount of dollars for a pass, or just the winter months or something along that to so that we don't take up space away from a paying customer. We understand that.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Moving on, do we have any council member announcements? Councilwoman Tracy.
Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to just mention again that tomorrow evening is our regular monthly community advisory group meeting for the Cotter Uranium Mill site. And we have been successful in finding a way to do hybrid meetings now. Because of COVID, we had been doing meetings by Zoom for 2.5 years. We had an in-person meeting in August But to a great extent, the regulators, agencies, the site owner and our facilitator who lives in Connecticut can't any longer commit to coming and doing in-person meetings every month as they did for years before COVID. So what we've done is we've arranged for a classroom at PCC Fremont campus. It's classroom number 128. So we're going to have a hybrid meeting, some people by Zoom, some folks in person there. Just wanted to make that known to folks in the community that if you're interested in what the latest is on the cleanup or the eventual cleanup of that contaminated site, you're welcome to join at the meeting. One of the things we're talking about tomorrow night, and I won't go into detail, but it's called Operable Unit 3. A Superfund site has 3 operable units. One is the site itself where the contamination occurred. Operable Unit 2 is the Lincoln Park area where there was contamination of groundwater. And to date, Operable Unit 3 hasn't been fully defined. And those of us who are really active with the committee are wanting to make sure that there's really the kind of investigation that needs to be done of areas of the community that might have been contaminated in the past and might need testing now. So there'll be some discussion of that tomorrow night. That's all.
Thank you. Anything else? Then we will move on to the consent agenda. And with that, Mr. Administrator, would you like to take us through that?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Item 8A is to approve the minutes for the regular city council meeting on October 3rd, the general government meeting on October 5th, and the special meetings on September 26th, which is the Energy Committee, and October 5th, which was the corrections stakeholder meeting. 8B is to award bid 2922, the flocculation mixer repair parts to Amwell in the amount not to exceed $12,000. 8C is for kinetic breaching tool purchase for the police department. 8D is to receive and file a monthly budget summary. 8E is to receive and file a list of bills. And 8F in your amended agenda is to award bid 5055 for mountain bikes to the police bike store in the amount not to exceed $6,869.95.
Thank you for that. Councilwoman Tracy.
I just wanted to check in and see if we no longer have an item 7 on the agenda.
We did not. There was a scheduling conflict.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Any comments? I was going to make the comment on the minutes for the Energy Committee meeting where Councilmember Tracy Worthington and myself were present, but no quorum was noted. And I said, well, wait a minute, there were 3 of us, but it takes 4 to make a quorum. And so I said, oh, that's right. Cindy has it right. Any corrections to the agenda or other comments? Then I'm open to a motion. Councilmember Smith.
Mayor Pro Tem and Council, I move to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Dennehy,
Aye.
Schmisher. Aye. B. Smith,
Aye.
Stein,
Aye.
Tracy,
Aye.
Worthington,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Aye. That motion has passed, and now we move to the administrator's report.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. You have your written reports, or my written report in your packets. I'm happy to answer any questions. A few things that, in addition to what you have in the written report. One, I want to, I think we talked about it briefly in a previous council meeting and maybe at the retreat. As far as the upcoming schedule goes, with holidays coming up, we are currently canceling the second meeting in November as well as the vision meeting in November. Those both happen the same week as Thanksgiving. And then in December, we have canceled the vision meeting in December because it's right before Christmas. But we tentatively have the second meeting scheduled based off of what agenda items may come in and need to come before council.
What meetings in December?
Right now, the only one that is canceled is the vision meeting.
21st?
Correct. In addition to that, or outside of scheduling, and did not make it into the administrator report, is to recognize that we have the annual meeting for the Municipal Clerks Association happening this week. Cindy Foster Owens, our own clerk, has put a lot of time in as on the hosts for that planning committee. And then also Cindy has been elected to the board of the association. So congratulations to Cindy for that. And then the last item I have that's not in your packet is a letter that I received from the Bridge Company. You have a printed copy in front of you where they are asking for, as it relates to the lease agreement, they're asking for permission to account for some dollars into next year's lease agreements. They had to order, they're doing a big Christmas display and holiday light display. They had to order and purchase a lot of those lights because of COVID delays back in July. And they're asking to defer some of that expense based off of when they install it into the next lease year. So the break point for the lease is October 31st. It's not a calendar year lease, and that's part of the reason why they're asking for this. Those expenses go against their marketing budget because events traditionally have been put against the marketing budget. And so I'm just looking for some direction from council if there are any concerns in them doing that. They have run this by their auditors. Their auditors don't have any concerns with this. This is really about the lease agreement, and they have a contractual spend amount that they have to spend, which is 6% on marketing expenses.
And so this, if I understand correctly, this is a request to split the spending between 2 lease years. And both those expenditures would go across against their
Respective.
yes, the respective public relations, essentially marketing money.
Marketing dollars. That's correct.
Marketing
sir.
dollars. And from your perspective, is there any reason that we shouldn't do this, or does it seem like a reasonable request?
I think, as it's presented here in this letter, it's a reasonable request. They're splitting it based off of when it actually gets installed, and I think that makes sense.
And so you're looking for direction.
Yes, sir.
And direction is either thumbs up or thumbs down. And so,
They're basically just pushing it off a couple days. That's all it is. Right?
That is correct. And, we can bring this back for ratification to council at the next meeting. But because the letter came in after the packet deadline, we weren't able to put it on for an official approval tonight.
thank you. And I see Amy, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I was wondering if it's normal for the bridge to spend marketing dollars on decorations.
As it relates to events that they're putting together, yes. I don't know that we have a whole lot of track record on, in particular on this, but this is a new event that they're creating.
Okay, thank you.
And just as kind of a follow-up to that, this is that we do expect these lights to last multi-years. Would that be correct?
That is my understanding.
Thank you. I don't think we've heard anything that would change, that changes my direction on this. And so we've got, here on the dais, we've got 6 thumbs up, and that looks like there's a 7th right there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that report, Ryan, and seeing no further questions, we'll now move to agenda item 10A, which is a discussion, and I believe we should vote on this. And an eventual vote. Just to remind everybody, the Energy Committee was created in March of 2021 and given the charge to review, evaluate, and make recommendations concerning energy options for Canyon City. It was brought to the committee's attention at our last meeting that the Public Utilities Commission is, as per legislative direction, holding hearings and investigating or exploring what is in some areas is called community choice energy or community choice aggregation. And the committee decided that council be given information and potential talking points. This came up at the end of the committee meeting. The committee did not agree on talking points, but appointed one member of the committee to draft some talking points that they sent to Ryan that is included in your packet here tonight. I did read those talking points myself, and I did provide council with a alternate set of talking points. But the kind of the question before us is that it's really twofold. Should the city submit comments to the Public Utilities Commission in their undertakings and study of the community choice issues, and what should those comments be? We did receive a couple of emails on this issue. The Colorado Department of Regulatory Agencies, which the Public Utilities Commission is a member of, did provide us with their list of topics that they intend to explore, but they're seeking public comment on those issues. And those include scope, resource adequacy and planning, energy efficiency programs, among other issues. So the question for us is, I guess, first, do we think that we should comment as a city? And second, what should those comments be? Have any thoughts from council? Councilwoman Tracy.
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. Just adding a little more context. What the PUC is involved in and has been for, I think, most of this year is a study that was the legislature passed legislation in the spring of 2021 for the PUC to spend most of 2022, among other things that they do, studying the concept of community choice energy and what would it look like in Colorado if there were ever enabling legislation passed. And the concept in a real simple form is that if there were legislation passed someday that would enable community choice energy, then communities and regions that are served by investor-owned utilities, so XL Energy and Black Hills Energy, would be able, if they chose to, they would be able to organize kind of a power authority, I use that term loosely, that would allow the existing investor-owned utility to stay in place and to do the distribution of power, the billing, all of the services, but the community collection, either a community, a city, or a regional combination of cities, would be able to go out on the wholesale energy market and see if they can buy the wholesale power cheaper. what Colorado, the people who are proposing this, which is not me, I don't know if I'm for it or against it because we don't know what it would look like in Colorado. But there are people in the Northern Front Range that have been working on this for several years. And what they are proposing and what I believe they're going to try to get into draft legislation next session in 2023 is what's called an opt-out system. So that even if you lived in a community that we have a new state law that allows this and your community decides to do it someday in the future, as an individual customer, you would still have the legal right and ability to opt out and just be served the same way, the same provider, the same costs and so forth. So I just wanted to provide a little more context on that. And I did want to ask too, that if, I know that the public hearing is tomorrow from 4 to 6. And I didn't know if anyone with the city had signed up for a slot to testify, or is that kind of a moot point at this point, or do we know?
That is what we're going to decide tonight.
Okay, do we know if there's still slots available? I guess is another item for that.
I do not know.
Okay.
Councilwoman Worthington.
Oh, I'm not nearly as eloquent as what Councilwoman Tracy said, but basically, in my simple terms, it just basically allows the PUC to know that because Canyon City is looking at different options for their electrical service, this is another option that is not anywhere close to being close to a decision or anything that way, but it sort of gives our buy-in to the PUC to say we would be interested if and when it ever happened. We may have taken a different track by that time and decided on a whole different way of going about it. But the thing is that our purview with our committee is to look at options, and this is another option that's in the near future. So that's what I'm thinking.
Thank you for that. Something to keep in mind, perhaps a little more context, is in the past, community choice energy or aggregation has been a choice concerning generation. And that's important to keep in mind. Oftentimes, communities choose a certain mix of generation options, and this in other places that has been enacted. The other something to contrast against that is that a franchise like the city has is something that deals with distribution and not generation. Councilwoman Tracy.
Thanks. Just one more comment I wanted to make, that I just think in general, it's always good for the city of Canyon City to express its views, whatever they are now, in the future, express those views to the Public Utilities Commission. As a city, until recently, we hadn't intervened in a rate case or anything before the Public Utilities Commission for over 10 years, I think. And so just in general, I do think it's good for them to hear from us. I'm sure that they know from what Pueblo went through several years ago, trying to break out of their franchise early. I'm sure that they do know there's some discontent here because of our high costs, but it's good to speak to them, I think, from time to time. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you for that. We do have two versions of comments that we can potentially make. One is in your packets. One was at your position here on the dais. And the kind of the difference between them is that that the first version, the version in our packets, said that we were in favor of, I believe that it said, let me see if I can find that. One of the things that we added there was that even with consumer choice energy, we are concerned about how stranded cost will be assessed. That is an issue that other communities have experienced. When you have a group that enter into a contract for energy purchase, the problem that can arise and has arisen in other areas is that if one of the large users and that group drops out of that contract, then the remaining members in that contract still have to pay costs associated with that contract, which can cause energy rates to rise. The other issue is that publicly owned utilities do invest in generation capacity, and that investment is essentially, in some ways to look at it, a contract between the customers and the utility. The utility, through the Public Utilities Commission and with their approval, tries to stay ahead of the energy generation curve so that there is electrical energy available on our grid when we need it. But they have to do that through investment. And part of the problems, or one of the challenges with community choice energy, is that what happens to that investor-owned utility that has generation assets that perhaps may not be needed in the future? Who will bear the cost for that? That has been raised in certain areas as an exit fee for to be able to do community choice energy. The second set of comments that you have in front of you pretty much mirror the first set down through the middle, or just a little bit after that. And the differences that we have really between the two, kind of wording, but one of the things that we think we know is that if Canyon City were to seek municipalization, it appears that all the options for less expensive electricity rates are fraught with risks and staggering costs with no guarantee of outcome for a potential to reduce electric rates 10, 20, or 30 years into the future. It goes on to say that we are in favor of lower rates. We're in favor of local control. We're in favor of the study that the PUC is conducting. And it goes on to list 3 areas that I believe the PUC should include in the study, which is grid stability. They do mention resource adequacy and planning and reliability. That may be a subset of that. But to me, it seemed that should be a explicit study item. And the other thing is that the potential for aggregators to be left with higher costs if the number of customers shrink after a contract is signed, or in other reasonable future scenarios. And since this is not a new concept, that the state, the PUC include a lessons learned section detailing the successes and failures, perhaps failures, of CCC in other localities. And Councilwoman Tracy.
Thanks. I didn't know we were going to get a second version, so I didn't bring with me the legislation that created this PUC study. I know that there's like 20 some things lined out in that legislation that they ask for the PUC to cover, but it's hard for me to know whether these 3 bullets that you have on this new version, if those are already in the legislation or not. And I guess the other part of the question is, since it's a legislature-driven study, I don't know if we can ask them to study new things. They're going to report out no later than December 15th of this year. So I guess I don't know how to evaluate that last part without seeing the legislation in front of me.
They are accepting public comment, and this would fall under that rubric.
Right. It's just, I guess when you word it that you should include, that the PUC should include in the study, and then you have the 3 bullets that I wish the audience could see too. But that's my question is, do we want to word it that way, that we would want the PUC to include something in a study that they're most of the way through?
How about emphasize?
Other comments, suggestions from council? Councilwoman Worthington.
Basically, what I just said is, instead of include, would be just to say should emphasize. as something from the perspective of Canyon City that, and also having seen failures, I would assume that CCE group here in Colorado is hopefully looking at those failures and trying to plan around those, in fact, as a way to improve the product, so to speak. But, you know, it doesn't hurt if what you're suggesting is to remind them that these are things to definitely take into consideration and emphasize. So that would be my only suggestion at this point.
Any other comments from council?
I'm gonna say, I kind of agree with John. I mean, this is an open. You know, they're taking statements from us right now and we're saying this and we're saying that we feel that this should include this. There's no other word to say, include this. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but they're asking for comments and this is what we're saying. We want to have this included in this study, period. I think that's pretty straightforward.
Councilwoman Stein.
I think that at this point, the legislature they're just studying this now. They're looking at it. And I think they, as Emily said, they know this about where we are right now. But we just need to let them know that we need to be open to options. We need to have the legislature support us in our search for options. And I think it's just another venue, and who knows what they're going to include once they're done. I mean, and I think we might ask if we could, maybe serve as a resource when they're considering things. That's a possibility. But I do think that this gives us another tool for our toolbox to try to bring affordable power to this part of the state. It's just another tool. And I don't think it's going to hurt for us to support looking into it. And, we have our caveats in place here. Those are the things that we want included. Doesn't hurt to do that, but I think that we need to, let the commission know that we're interested in options.
Any further comments from council?
I definitely echo what Councilmember Stein just said. How often is it that we get a chance to talk to the PUC? So I don't think we should walk on eggshells. I think we should tell them exactly what we need and what we're dealing with in Canyon City, because nobody seems to be listening, no matter how loud the microphones are turned up.
Further comments from council? Then I'm open to a motion. So we're going to, what we need to do is, number one, decide whether we're going to comment or not. And then number two, decide on what the comments will be. And also along with that, who can make the comments.
Exactly. I was gonna say, who's gonna make the comments for the city at this?
Councilwoman Worthington.
I make the motion that we definitely talk tomorrow evening at the PUC hearing to let them know that the city of Canyon City is definitely interested in this study, and I'll look forward to the results.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comment? Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Dennehy,
Aye.
Schmisher,
Aye.
B. Smith,
Aye.
Stein,
Aye.
Tracy,
Aye.
Worthington,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Aye. The motion carries.
May I just ask one? May I just ask a question? Who is gonna be the representative for the city?
Perhaps we should decide on what the comments are going to be, and then we can choose a
Okay.
representative or
Okay.
seek volunteers or whatever we would like. Any further thoughts on what comments should be made? Then I'm open to a motion. Oh. Councilwoman Schmisher, I see your hand up there?
I'm happy to make the motion. I would motion that we move forward with the comments as amended as they were provided to us this evening.
Do we have a second?
The updated ones?
Yeah, I said amended.
Yes. Yes, the ones
Second.
provided this evening. As opposed to the ones provided in the packets.
Okay.
And Councilwoman Tracy?
We have a motion, a second, right?
Yeah.
You do
Okay,
have a
I,
second? Thank you. Okay,
okay, yeah.
so further discussion.
Yes, thanks. I wonder if we wanted to consider kind of along the lines of what Councilmember Worthington said a minute ago about maybe just changing the wording in that last main bullet. And my only concern is that since the legislature designed what's supposed to be in the study a year and a half ago, that maybe we can just word that a little bit differently so that it doesn't sound like we don't understand that they've been embarked on this study as directed by the legislature since the beginning of this year. So I'm just looking for a different verb there, I guess.
That I'm not sure which bullet you're referring to.
This one,
The last main one.
these three, so. So basically this right here, John.
Mhm. So the introduction to the three
Yeah.
points.
Yes.
Gotcha. Any further discussion? I am open to a motion.
You got it. You had a motion and a
We have
second.
to finish.
You had a
one.
motion and
We
a
can
second.
amend.
Oh, this is discussion, sorry.
Yeah.
So now we're, unless there's further discussion on whether,
I guess my question would be, do you have any suggestions on how to amend that?
I'd give that a try. If Mayor Pro Tem is okay with that.
Sure.
Maybe just change that last main bullet to say something like, and I'm just making this up as I go, but say something like that the city hopes that the PUC addresses 3 areas of interest to us. They are. And maybe just say addresses rather than say include in the study, because I know the study is already designed.
would you restate that, please? The city hopes that the PUC
Addresses the following in their study or something like that. Someone may have a better suggestion.
Councilwoman Stein.
I think it would be easier if we could change that last bullet to say that the legislature could include perhaps what they've discovered about the experiences of other states in the study, because I'm sure they've looked at that.
Mhm.
I
I
mean,
think
that's what the.
it's, I think it's part of the legislation, but again, I don't have it
Right,
with me.
right,
so I
but if
don't-
that just say, that should, should be included or highlighted. The experiences of. Rather than successes and failures, just what the experiences were, because. As a committee, we listened to one person. A specific state and one person. There may be other states who had different approaches to it. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but I'm sure the legislature is looking at more than just one, one state's experience. I mean, there are probably several states that have tried this. So maybe just say, whatever to include, whatever, just so that it's part of the study, what they discovered about other states.
Thank you for that. I would say, that this is our chance to tell both the PUC and the legislature the things that we think are important. And irrespective of what the legislation may say, these, in my view, these are things that if the legislature did not include them, should have included them. And it is important, I believe, also for the PUC not to just look at the issue of community choice energy in a vacuum, but to look at where it has been successful and where it has been unsuccessful. And I think it's important to make that point to them. Councilwoman Worthington.
Perhaps tailgating or tailing on, you might just change that sentence that Councilperson Tracy mentioned, was the city hopes that the PUC and any potential legislation addresses the following.
Love it.
And then that hits it.
Thank you for that. Any further comments? Councilwoman Tracy.
Just a question, do we need a motion to amend to accompany or to count for this change in wording on those two bullets, or do we just want to do this? The maker of the motion, I guess, could agree to the changes.
Yes, and I do agree to the changes proposed by Councilwoman Worthington.
And the person who made the second would also have to agree.
Resecond.
So we have a motion to approve these talking points to the PUC and seconded as amended. The amendment is on the final bullet and the three sub bullets underneath that is that the language that is there now. However, there are three areas that the PUC should include in the study. They are be replaced by the city hopes that the PUC and any potential legislation addresses the following in their study. Any further discussion? And then would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Dennehy,
Aye.
Councilmember Schmisher,
Aye.
Councilmember B. Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Stein,
Aye.
Councilmember Tracy,
Aye.
Councilmember Worthington,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Aye. Thank you for that, council. Now we have to decide, do we have a volunteer or do we get to select the victim?
And just for a point of clarification, one of the committee members, Kirk Souther, had volunteered, but he has a conflict. So he is not able to do that speaking tomorrow.
So if the council desires, I will volunteer to, number one, check to make sure that there is a slot available. And number two, secure a slot, secure such a slot if it is, and then provide these comments. I do believe I've captured the appropriate wording. And that would be just a direction. Thumbs up. Great. Okay.
I'd identify myself as John, as Mayor Pro Tem of the city.
That's probably wise to agree to what I will say there. What I would plan on saying is that I'm an elected member of City Council, Mayor Pro Tem for Canyon City, and also Chair of the Canyon City Energy Franchise Committee.
Yep.
Okay, I think we're good. Moving on, we're now ready for 10B, commercial trail use policy.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm going to turn this one over to Rex. Rex and the committee worked very hard on this trail use policy, and we'll hand it over to him to discuss what they discussed and how they came about to this policy.
Thank you. Earlier this summer, council appointed through an application process, a commercial trail use policy committee. And the goal of that committee was to create a commercial trail use policy with the aim of, with this policy, to showcase our community, our incredible trail system, but with in mind keeping the usage at an acceptable level. So the policy that we've developed that's in your packet tonight, I think we've struck the perfect balance with this policy. Like I say, we have an incredible trail system here in Fremont County, and we've got an incredible trail builder on staff. So make a long story short, I think the policy that we've came up with, we spent a lot of time, a lot of meetings going back and forth, and had a lot of incredible dialogue during those meetings. And the policy that we've developed, I think will suit everybody. I think we'll have enough commercial trail use and not too much commercial trail use. And that's kind of what we were shooting for originally, was to find that balance and to not love our trail systems to death. And I think we've hit on this policy. I think we've hit it right on the head, and I think it's a great policy. We've had so far this year, we've had 3 commercial events take place in our parks, and they have been nothing but positive comments and just incredible comments from the trail users and those people that are coming from outside our community and those within our community. So we're on the map right now for our trails, and I know future events are coming, and I think we've, like I said, struck that balance to where we can have these limited number of commercial events and still not affect, the daily use of our local trail users and our nonprofit groups. So I don't know if you had a chance to look at the policy in there, but I think it's a great policy, at least to begin with. Spent a lot of time on it, and like I said, had a lot of great discussion, and I think we're ready to present this to you. And I would like to first off, thank the committee members for all their hard work that they put into this and all the time they committed. We had 2 council members, Councilmember Amy Schmischer, Councilmember Tim Dennehy, Brian Ledoux, Kristen Economy, Kat McNeil, Mary Yang, Ashley Sack, and our trail builder extraordinaire, Steve Thomas. So I'd like to thank all those people. And with that, I would like to respectfully ask the council to adopt the trail policy as presented in your package.
One,
Thank you for
sorry.
that,
Mayor
Rex.
Pro Tem.
Ryan.
One amendment to that is that we did receive some typos and editorial edits from Councilmember Schmischer and Councilmember Tracy, and we would ask that the amended versions with those corrections be approved.
And I have made those corrections, and I could send a policy to each of you.
I did an independent review, and I also may have a couple of corrections that I'm not sure whether they were picked up yet or not. But I'll hand my corrections over to you, Ryan, and you can determine. Questions, comments from council?
Got one.
Sure.
And this has been a fantastic thing. I just want to make sure that, just legality wise in that, are we good on with the whole policy on here and setting the?
I did send this to the
Okay.
legal team.
Perfect. Thank you.
Our office did review.
Got it.
Thank you. That was one of my questions. Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to thank Director Brady for his exceptional leadership, inclusiveness, thoughtfulness, attention to detail throughout this entire process. And I think it's a testament that we have, I believe, 3 of the citizen community members, Brian, Ashley, and Kat, actually in the audience tonight. Really was a whole of Canyon effort, and just really appreciate his leadership throughout and his fine attention to detail and balancing the needs of our community with the needs of commercial trail event organizers. And I'm really pleased with where we came out, and really hopeful that it'll pave a fantastic way forward for trail usage on Canyon City owned and maintained trails. So just huge kudos to Rex and his leadership in this process.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, thank you, Councilmember Smisser. Councilmember Tracy.
Thanks. I'm about to have a coughing fit here. I had asked Administrator Stevens if there was going to be an application form, and maybe you can say something about that while I cough.
Yeah, there is a planned application and checklist, correct, Rex?
What we anticipate doing is asking for a event proposal, which we have in the past, seemed to work pretty well. That lays out everything that we need to know as a city of what the event is actually going to be like, and, you know, the numbers and the trail use, the trails they are going to use, the trails they're not going to use. And so we have a really good idea of what's happening with that event through the proposal. And there will be I'll call it an application checklist. When we, as a committee, sit down and we approve this particular event, we'll send the contract and the application checklist. So they can fill out the contract, get that part of it done. And then with the application checklist, obviously it's a checklist, and have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? So it'll be ready to go, and everything checked off the list, and shouldn't be a problem at all.
I do have a couple of questions. I'm looking on page 3. And under 3.9, safety road crossings. And we talk about requiring flaggers if there's going to be a road crossing. Are there any standards for flaggers? Do we just leave that up to the event organizer?
That is
To-
the responsibility of the event organizer to man those stations anywhere there's a road crossing, and every event we've had thus far, that has been in place.
Are there any standards that we know
As
of?
far as standards, I don't think so, other than, you know, most of them are volunteers.
Mhm.
I don't think they have to be certified flaggers or anything like that. We do ask that in the policy that they, you know, wear reflective jackets and that they're identify themselves as flaggers. So
Great, good. That's good that we've thought about that. The other question I have is under 3.3 trash removal. And it says, the last sentence there says, the event organizer shall police the trail course, staging and camping areas for litter. And I thought it would be good to say when we expected that to happen. I mean, do we expect it to happen hourly or twice a day, or at the beginning and end, or
on
at
the
the
trail
end?
course itself, you know, if they use the campground, then that would be a daily process, probably multiple times a day.
So my suggestion is to say when that, to put some,
Okay,
to say when that would happen, because that it's vague right now. And if they did it one time, they would be in compliance with the policy. And we'd like you to make sure that, you know, where appropriate, you hold their feet to the fire.
right.
So it would be good to say when.
That's a good point. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from council? We do have and I will get to you in just a second, but we do have a community member that'd like to speak. Will, would you like to address us, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council, for allowing me to speak. As you may know, I own a couple businesses here in town, one of which is Carta Jeep Tours. We tend to cross, I think, some of these trails. Again, I haven't seen the proposal, so my questions are probably a little vague. And of course, my concern is the protection of the business that I run. we do cross many of these trails and whatnot, and I'm not sure exactly what's in the proposal, like I just said. But it's nice to hear that there'll be someone checking road crossings and stuff, because we work with Rex and the rec district, just to, we get phone calls from them letting us know when these events are happening, and we work our schedule around them. Some of my concerns are, is there a moratorium? How many events will there be a year? Is there a limit? Or do we just have one every weekend? Because one of my concerns is between some of the events that happen within the city parks, plus some that happen throughout BLM or county, like the hill climb, I get shut down. And I'm all about sharing the trails, but I'm also at a point where if I get shut down on big weekends, which is what the hill climb in the past has done to me until they changed some of their rules just recently, allowing us to pass through, even though that is somewhat difficult now. I'd like to kind of make sure that other users that cross the trail systems, that their businesses or their use was addressed in this proposal. Again, I'm not opposed to what's happened so far. I think what the trail system is bringing to our community is wonderful. I'm not opposed to it at all. But I also want to look into the future and not be completely, shut down. My business theoretically could be affected from this. So I was wondering if Rex or anybody could brief us on that.
I'll take the first shot at that. What this says is that that we believe that this policy, which I understand you haven't read, is that right, Will? It should be available on the website, but we believe that this balances that the balance that we've achieved will allow the city to play host to a limited number of commercial trail events each year, while still providing abundant opportunity for local trail users. One of the policy provisions is that the organizers should assume that there will be citizen trail users on the trails. It is possible to have a waiver for that granted by our parks director on a case-by-case basis. But the presumption is that citizen trail users will be present during an event. And so the number there are numbers in your 4 a year, I think, is what the general goal is. I would say it's not a absolute specific number, but it is something that we'll either have more or less of as appropriate, considering that we do want our citizens to be able to use the trails too, besides commercial events. And then as far as road crossings, as I understand it, your Jeep tours are all on city or county roads. Your Jeep.
Mostly, yes.
Do you?
I mean, I'm trying to think here. Yes, definitely. I mean, I guess it's not BLM roads, so it would be county roads and the city. Yes.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So road crossings are covered.
Okay.
That where there's a road crossing, there needs to be flaggers so that.
And in the past, that's been handled excellently. I mean,
Great.
FAR, whoever puts together, does a really good job of that.
Glad to hear that. Rex, do you want to add anything to what I said there?
Well, actually, we've set the limit at 8.
8, it is 8.
Yeah, and we look at that as 4, we'll call them multiple day events, which
Gotcha.
would be last 2 days, and then 4 pass-through events, which begin and end on the same day. So there would be no more than 8 commercial events per year. And that could be 8 days up to possibly 12 days that there would possibly be. And depending on what trail that we're using for that event, if it's the Riverwalk, it's not a big deal, but if it's Royal Cascade going over into the gorge where Will goes, and like our last event, the Apex event that went from Centennial Park up Royal Cascade and across the bridge and then down the county road and ended back in South Canyon. There'll be, a few of those as well. So I think the impact on Will's business in particular would be minimum.
Thank you for
And
that.
I do try to keep Will informed when we have these events coming up, so has knowledge well in advance.
Did you have a further concern?
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rex. I appreciate the clarification.
Thank you. And we do have a couple council members that wish to speak. Council Member Worthington.
Well, I just wanted to give kudos to the whole group who put this together. Oh, I have to have a microphone. I just wanted to compliment everybody that was on the committee because this is very well written, very well thought out, and I just wanted to pass on my congratulations because when you guys were formed was my first night of being able to sit after being sworn in. So I just wanted to, we kind of came in together and you did a great job and I'm still learning. So thank you.
They did. And again, I thank every member of the committee.
Sure. Councilmember Schmischer.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to add a few thoughts or reflections on Mr. Colin's remarks. The first one is that section 3.1 is specifically about public accessibility. And it states that the city trail system must always remain open and passable for public use prior to, during, and after the event, unless otherwise agreed upon in writing. So we really do want the default to be that the trails are always open and accessible to the public. I also just wanted to mention that some of the concerns that he reflected upon were exactly why we wanted to form this committee now, to get ahead of this problem and to ensure before it actually was a problem for Canyon City in terms of the popularity of our trails and commercial trail events coming in at a higher rate than what we thought we wanted to see in our town. So we really wanted to do this to mitigate problems before they occurred, because we knew that we wanted to maintain this balance that Director Brady spoke of, ensuring that we had weekends and opportunities for our trails to be used by the people of Fremont County and the people of Canyon City and not be overrun and solely used by commercial event companies. So just wanted to share that as well.
Thank you for that. Any further comments or questions from council? I am open to a motion. Oh, I'm sorry. Brandon Smith.
Oh, I was just going to make the motion.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem and Council, I move to approve the commercial trail use policy with amendments.
I second.
We have an emotion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Dennehy,
Aye.
Schmischer,
Aye.
B. Smith,
Aye.
Stein,
Aye.
Tracy,
Aye.
Worthington,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Aye.
Thank you very much. If I have two grandkids waiting at home, so I'm going to duck out if there's no more questions.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for the members of our community and our council that participated on this. This truly is a pretty good document, pretty tight, and a lot of thought did go into it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we move on to introduction and adoption by title only of Resolution 13, Series 2022, entitled "A Resolution Appointing Eric Bellis as a Deputy Municipal Judge." Mr. City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick. The resolution before you appoints Eric Bellis as the Mayor Pro Tem mentioned. The candidate was interviewed and vetted by Judge Allen. We do not typically need a deputy judge. This is more for cases in the event that Judge Allen is ill, or if there's a conflict and he cannot sit on the bench and preside over a particular hearing. So that is the long and short of it. Our previous deputy judge has retired. He spends about half his time in New Mexico now. So that is part of the reason why this is coming before you now.
Thank you for that. Mr. Stevens, any questions, comments from the council? Oh, yes. Yeah. Councilmember Schmisher, do you still have your hand up?
I do. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to share one other piece of information that Administrator Stevens had mentioned to me in response to a question, which was just how often is the deputy municipal judge used? And he had mentioned, about 5.5 hours this year, 4 hours last year, none in 2020, none in 2019. So just wanted to share that, it is a relatively, it isn't a position that's called on very often, but obviously one that's very important to have. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Tracy.
Thanks. I just wanted to comment on questions I had asked by email, just to want to, and basically not a question at this point, just wanted to note that our charter and our code have certain basic requirements for municipal judge, and Mr. Bellis meets those requirements in terms of education, experience, and that he lives in the metro area of Canyon City. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Any further questions? Let's see, so we're ready for a motion. Is that correct? We're ready for a motion. Councilmember Smith.
Mayor Pro Tem and Council, I move to approve Resolution 13, series of 2022.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Dennehy,
Aye.
Schmisher,
Aye.
B. Smith,
Aye.
Stein,
Aye.
Tracy,
Aye.
Worthington,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Aye. With that, the resolution passes. And now we move to introduction and first reading by title only of ordinance 17, series 2022, entitled An Ordinance of the City of Canyon City amending section 13.06.06 of the Canyon City Municipal Code concerning penalties for violating the city's backflow prevention and cross-connection requirements. Mr. Administrator, would you like to present a report?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick. This was first introduced to City Council at a City Council meeting in September. It was assigned to the vision meeting, I believe, in September for discussion. And that discussion and the comments that were made during that discussion were incorporated. I will pass this over to Water Superintendent Payne to talk about why the backflow, why this ordinance is coming forward, and to provide some context on why this middle ground is needed. We currently have rules and regulations that are fairly heavy-handed, and this allows a gradual approach to bringing people into compliance. I'll pass it over to Mr. Payne.
Thanks, Ryan. So the state of Colorado requires Canyon City as a water provider to protect the community's drinking water from contamination that can result from backflow conditions. Specifically, the Colorado primary drinking water regulations require that water suppliers. Thank you. Did everybody catch it, or should I start again? Good. Okay. So it requires that we develop and implement a written backflow prevention program. We notify the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment of any suspected or confirmed backflow events. We ensure that they do not create conditions that would favor backflow at any of their facilities or throughout the water distribution system. We survey commercial businesses and multifamily dwellings to ensure that approved backflow prevention devices are installed and operating. And more specific to this ordinance, we ensure that backflow prevention assemblies are tested annually and records kept for compliance. Some enforcement measures that the state can take against us if we don't follow these regulations. You know, some of the more drastic ones, there are possible criminal violations that we can get, class 3 and class 5 felony charges, depending on the nature of the violation. The state can levy $1,000 a day violation fines, plus any additional public health costs. They can additionally do administrative $1,000 a day violation costs. Me and James could lose our certification as operators, water distribution operators, And then there's also tier 3 notices that would have to be distributed in consumer confidence reports. So that kind of gives you an overview of the background of the whole kind of backflow program and why we have to do it. The intent of the change in the ordinance that we're trying to present to you is, like Ryan said, a little less heavy-handed. The only enforcement action that we have right now is shutting a business's water off. And so that would kind of have the unintended really consequence in generally shutting a business down, as certainly not something that we want to do. So what we're trying to do is institute some fines up to $250 a day after a whole lot of time periods that we can go through that timeline later that we would put in before a business's water shut off. So that's kind of what we're trying to get at tonight. So with that, I'd kind of open it up to any questions.
Attorney Sellers, do I?
I have
see-
some corrections to the ordinance, but if there's specific questions for.
Okay,
Director
why don't
Payne.
why don't we have some discussion first and
Sure.
then we can hear what the corrections are? And you completed your report to us?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Do we have questions or comments from council? Councilwoman Tracy.
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. The only thing I have is just a possible wording change. I don't know if this is something that Attorney Sellers is also going to address, but on page 3 toward the bottom, D1, it just didn't read quite right to me where it says, if the city imposes civil penalties, et cetera, then within 10 days, penalty assessment is served on the owner. Is that to say within 10 days from when the penalty assessment is served on the owner? I just want to be sure that the wording is clear enough there for everyone.
I kind of have a add-on question to that. And mine is kind of brought to the fore under section 2C, civil penalties authorized, where it says the director is hereby, and I'm looking at page 2 of the bill. And it says, the director is hereby authorized to impose and collect civil penalties not to exceed $250 per violation per day, starting from the day the violation is identified or reported until it is eliminated. And then it goes on to say that before assessing a civil penalty, an alleged violator should be served a written notice of violation that identifies one or more specific violations and be given 10 days to cure such violations. And so my question is, and perhaps I think this is the same one that Councilmember Tracy is asking, is the identification is one category, reporting is a second category. When is the potential violator notified that there is a violation out there hanging over them? The concern that I have is right now, it seems like the language is a little bit vague, and that the penalty should start, I believe, and this is something perhaps council has an opinion on. The penalty should start when the violator is notified, the potential violator is notified, and not when it's merely identified or reported. That could cover a multitude of conditions or occasions, it would seem to me. And I'm just looking for, if I was a business owner that had a backflow, excuse me, preventer, and was looking at this ordinance as to how to comply with it, I would be concerned about when penalties started. Does that seem to encompass your question too there, Council Tracy?
Sorry, mine's just a wording question. I think it's related. And maybe the more general question is, do we need like a real concrete timeline to be sure that we're all on the same page, so to speak, about when things start and when the
Okay.
10 days are counted?
And Councilmember Schmisher, you have a comment?
Mine is along the same lines. I understand from the memo and from the vision committee meeting that the 10 days wouldn't start until 60 days after, like when you're 60 days past due. But I don't think that that's actually specified or outlined in the ordinance itself. And it's just a little unclear from the ordinance when you actually become in violation. So I agree. I think a little bit more specificity and a little bit more clarity without making the ordinance too detailed and, putting the things that need to be in the department policies in the department policies. But I think that we need to do a little bit more within the ordinance itself to outline that and to ensure that we're all on the same page, and to ensure that it really is 60 days after being due and you have been noticed, that's when this 10-day clock would start. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Council Member Smith.
I just wanted to commend the water department for being less heavy-handed. It seems like in today's world, everything becomes more heavy-handed. And since I joined council in 2020, we made it a point to be more business friendly. And I just wanted to commend the water department for joining that force with us. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Stein.
I can see where if a business had too much trash, not like in the front of their business or something like that, giving them, is it 30 days or before the penalties start? But this is something that's this is a public health hazard. And I'm just wondering what the actual timeline is, if it, and what the state health department, how long are they going to allow us? I mean, is that something that will show up in testing that they would flag?
So it's 120 days via the state. Yes, from the time that it should be tested to violation.
And that's the state.
Correct.
Oh. Thank you.
But it's really simple, right? You just get your backflow tested and there's no penalty.
Yes, sir.
But we are dealing with exceptions here. We have had people that have not done that, and we would like to greatly encourage them to do that.
That's correct.
Attorney Sellers, did you have some comments you wanted to make, or?
Sure, I'll address the timing of the penalty first and then talk about the minor corrections. One of them, which was the one that Councilmember Tracy brought up. So the short answer is you can absolutely have penalties start on the date of the notice of violation. I'm going to give you the legal answer and not the policy answer. When you are, let's say you receive a citation and you go to court and you have an ongoing, maybe it's even resolved, but it was ongoing for 30 days, let's say. The court is going to impose fines from the date of violation when it was first discovered, whether you had notice or not, because you're not allowed to defend by saying, I didn't know I was violating the code. That knowledge is imputed to you. And so that's why it's set up like this, because it mirrors how other enforcement works at the city in a variety of different Title 8, Title 2021. So that's kind of how it works. But that policy wise, you may choose to go a different direction. So that's the legal answer and the policy answer. In the section that Councilmember Tracy brought up, D1, we are suggesting that it says, right after it says within 10 days from the date the penalty assessment is served on the owner. So, and then back up at the top, the actual title of the ordinance does not reflect the second section that's being amended. So the sections being amended are 1306-020 and 1306-060. And then there is a typo currently in the code now that was included in this. And so it's at the top of page 2, it's numbered subsection 3. So it says whenever service is denied or discontinued, it shall be provided or restored until it shall not be provided or restored until the condition or defect identified. And it says C2, it needs to be G2. There actually is no C2 in that section. So that's online. We did not amend that language. So I don't know where that typo came from, but we should correct it now. So.
Thank you for that. I do have one further question, and that is for the state's purposes, if there's a violation, who is the violation given to? The state
The water department.
department, or is it would that be you personally or the cities or the department?
The department.
So it's a corporate, essentially a corporate violation, and not a personal criminal or civil penalty. Thank you.
Not to start off with. Yeah.
There are a lot of nuances there.
There's a lot of.
Yeah, so it would be to the city because the department's not a legal entity, right? So it would be to the city.
Right.
To the city.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then it could trickle down to personal. Like if we were negligent or something. of that
Depending
nature.
on negligence, exactly. Okay. Any further questions or comments? Councilmember
I just
Smith?
have a further comment. It's $25, I think, is what it costs to do a backflow test. Maybe it goes up to 50 now. I was 150. It's a one-time a year thing. It's less than $250, which is the fine. Test your backflow, and we don't have to worry about anything.
Good advice. Any other questions or comments? If none, I'm open to a motion. And the motion should reflect that there's a change to the title, a block of the ordinance, that it does include 1306-020 and the revisions that our attorney Catherine Sellers has made.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick,
Yes.
it looks like Councilmember
Oh,
Smisher has. her hand
Thank
up.
you, Councilmember Schmitzer.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm comfortable passing this on first reading, but I would ask that the city please reflect back on the comments that were shared during the Vision Committee meeting and the comments that were shared this evening regarding Section 2C to see if there's additional language that can be included there that better outlines kind of the timeline that we will be following for someone to be found in violation and then for this 10-day window to start. So I would just ask for that to be added before it comes back for second reading, if it is passed this evening.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Tracy.
Just a quick comment to add on to that. Maybe it could just be some kind of a graphic representation, a figure 1 or something added into the ordinance that just spells out those timelines and when things happen.
Thank you for that. So if there are no further questions or comments, I'm open to a motion.
What are the revisions?
Would
Page
you,
2, 3.
would you like to hear those again?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm not ready to restate the revisions.
I can, but I would also ask for some clarification
Sure.
related to Councilmember Schmischer's comments. And maybe my response to them. I think I understand what she's asking for, but I guess I also need to know if that's the consensus of council. One of the reasons I have a concern about adding that language is we have done that nowhere else in the code. This would be totally novel in this section. So code enforcement, stormwater, we don't have any of that building codes. We don't have any of that type of language that says the notice has to be served within a certain amount of days or anything like that. So that would be totally novel here. And I also am concerned about, let's say it doesn't get served within those numbers of days. Do we somehow, is there an argument we've lost jurisdiction? I think laying that stuff out in the code is just not the appropriate location. I do think department policy is a great place for that. So if the council wants to see flexibility in a department policy before a notice of violation is served, like we've talked about with code enforcement, the courtesy notices, the discussion, the community involvement, I think that's a great place for that.
In policy. Thank
Yes.
you.
May I respond, Mayor Pro Tem?
Sure, please.
So Attorney Sellers, I'm by no means suggesting that we put in specific timelines by which the city must provide notices or in any way hamstring the city or open the city up to that sort of liability. All I'm asking for is our intent is that the violation period, I believe from what Superintendent Payne mentioned starts at the 60 days past due timeframe, and then and then essentially it's kind of at the 90-day mark that we're actually talking about fining people. So I'm not asking that we add in, we will, we'll provide notices when you're due, and we'll provide notices at 30 days and 60 days, and we'll do a written and an in-person. I'm not suggesting that we add any of that level of detail in. I completely agree. The department policy manual is the appropriate place for that. What I would like to see, and whether it's in the graphic as Councilwoman Tracy suggested, or just one additional sentence, is kind of the timeframe that needs to pass before you're in violation, or a little bit more clarity as to when this 10-day window that we're talking about actually begins. So I hope that that provides a little bit more clarity as to what, from my perspective, I think would be a more appropriate balance between city regulation and ensuring that we continue to be business friendly. Thanks.
So if I can just clarify, there is no violation for a period of 60 days. Is that council's desire?
So that's your understanding of what,
I think that's what I'm hearing, is that basically there's no it won't be determined to be a violation until 60 days has passed from some original point. So I'm just trying to understand a little bit, so I bring back the right language.
Sure,
So,
sure. So it's a request for clarification.
yes.
So I believe that that's what Superintendent Payne had mentioned, that it was at the 60-day past due mark, that it would, in the memo, it says that it's the water department's intent to provide a middle ground of being able to impose a fine to accounts that are 60 days past due. This would give an account 90 days and 3 notices from the water department to have a company perform a backflow test before the fines would be imposed. So I believe that that's the intent, but perhaps Superintendent Payne could provide more clarity.
No, that's correct.
So if we were to put that in there, so the fine language would completely would need to be altered to not allow the imposition of fines except from the date of the notice of violation. So it would not, I mean, yeah, from the date of the notice of violation, not the date of the violation, because during that 90 days, I think, or I'm a little confused between the 60 and 90, but whatever the time period is, there basically would be no fines applicable to that period. And that's fine if that's the way you want to go. I just need to know.
And that we have, before I jump in, we have a couple of council members that'd like to speak to this. Councilmember Tracy.
I'd be fine, consistency, I think, is important from different parts of the code to other parts of the code. My comment a few minutes ago about putting a figure in here, if it belongs better in policy rather than in here, I'm fine with that. I guess, and maybe it's just me, I think the discussion is making it more confusing rather than less confusing. So I'm not sure what the solution is, but I generally don't want to see this ordinance go off in a real different direction from what we do with other kinds of penalties in other circumstances. So where that leaves us, I'm not sure.
Yes. Councilmember Worthington.
My take on our discussion is basically making sure that the customer understands when the fine is applicable. So however, if that's best addressed either in the ordinance or if it can be handled in the policy, basically it's so the customer knows, okay, on this date, you will begin to be fined. And I think that's where it's a little bit more business friendly by at least giving them a clue up front and how that's addressed, whatever's best. But that's what I think we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Worthington. I would say, having been subject to Clean Water Act requirements in several different settings, it is an extremely punitive regulation. And that generally, at least absent sometimes extraordinary circumstances, that no quarter is given. But what our issue before us here is that we want some middle ground whereby if we have a recalcitrant business owner who is refusing to do the backflow testing, that we have a way to turn up the heat. And I think what council is requesting is that we make sure that information is conveyed to a business owner. Because if we can take up to 90 days to correct a backflow prevention, 90 days of $250 a day is all of a sudden major dollars. And so that, I think that is part of the concern where, at least from my perspective, what my concern would be from identification of a violation.
And maybe I can suggest a more middle ground. Council could, recommend / direct staff to develop a portion of the policy that talks about the delinquent notices, the not notices of violation, but the delinquent notices during that 90 days, but then have fines start from the date of violation. And the policy would state that obviously, unless the exception that's already in the ordinance regarding, public health safety, if there's a significant issue, which would be an exception, the notice of violation isn't served until there's been at least 3 delinquency notices or whatever.
30, whatever.
Right. So that I think might bring your fine concern down, and it basically kind of directs staff in the direction that I think you want to go.
So let me pose the question this way. Would it be possible for you to have at least a draft portion of the policy that can be reviewed by council before this comes back before us, so that we can have some warm fuzzies that were both enforcing not only our regulations but state regulations, but in as business friendly a manner as we can and as circumstances dictate. Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, so when we talked about this in the vision committee, I kind of gave you guys a timeline of what those look like. Is that enough of an outline for you?
It could
Would
be
you
as
want more
simple as
detail than that?
what Councilwoman Tracy recommended, just a
Yeah.
little diagram that, that detailed this for us, because right now I think council is struggling with understanding the timeline for sure. Councilmember Stein.
I think maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but what I think I heard from Mr. Payne is that he's trying to be business friendly in not shutting off their water. Correct? That was our original intent.
Mhm.
So maybe we should not lose sight of that. I mean, with the timeline makes sense, but by the same token, we're not shutting off their water, which would essentially put them out of business. Thanks.
Thank you for that comment. Yes, Administrator Stevens?
Yeah, I think, we could probably definitely have that, some type of timeline for council to review at second reading.
Okay,
Some type of diagram or flow chart or something along those lines.
I think that would be very helpful for everyone concerned. And understanding that would be the direction from council. I'm open to a motion unless there's further discussion.
Well, what were the amendments that we started with?
Would you like me to go over those?
Yes, if you would.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
So the title is amended, the title of the ordinance is amended to reflect that sections 1306.020 and section 1306.060 are being amended. In section 1 of the ordinance in G3, the reference to subparagraph C2 shall be corrected to be G2. In section 2 of the ordinance, subsection C, we will revise it to have the fine trigger from the date the notice of violation is served on the owner or operator. And then finally, in D1, in the same section of the ordinance, it will read, if the city imposes civil penalties pursuant to subsection C of this section, then within 10 days of the date, the penalty assessment is served on the owner, and the rest of the sentence remains as is.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and Council, I move to approve ordinance 17 series of 2022 with the amendments stated by Attorney Sellers.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Schmisher?
Aye.
E. Smith?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye. And with that, we'll move on to agenda item D, introduction and first reading. Excuse me. Let me get to the next page. Item E, introduction and first reading by title only of ordinance 18 series 22 entitled an ordinance of the city of Canyon City amending chapter 20.10 of the Canyon City Municipal Code concerning notices of violation and penalty assessment for stormwater violations. Mr. Administrator, you have a report for us?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick. Again, this ordinance came before City Council at a City Council meeting and was assigned to the September 21st vision meeting. At that meeting, there were some requested changes to Section E, Part 2 to clarify the period of the fine. City Council also asked about referencing the stormwater manual. That reference, although it does not show up in this revision, is already referenced as part of the code. And under code section 20.10.130. I will pass it over to our stormwater coordinator, Glenda DeBecker, to just give a overview of what this ordinance does and why it is needed.
So we are looking at just amending our enforcement, which is 20.10.160 to allow in egregious cases the movement to fines for violations rather than going through our normal steps of verbal or written notice of non-compliance, then moving forward with the fines and giving them a 10-day correction period. We occasionally, and it is occasionally, have such egregious occurrence of illegal dumping, or we have chronic violations of our illicit discharge and our construction ordinances under the stormwater title, that a fine is the most likely way to get these corrected quickly. In most cases, we do move through all the different phases of verbal or written notice of non-compliance, education, and then if not corrected within 10 days, move to fines. So we're just asking that we modify the Title 20 to allow, in rare instances with the approval of the Director of Public Works, to move straight to fines.
So unlike the other ordinance, this ordinance actually has the opposite issue. So the previous ordinance had no middle ground and went straight to a shutoff. The language in this particular section of the code has the middle ground, and the process for that middle piece and notices and all of those things, but it doesn't have a direct remedy for those egregious instances.
Thank you for that. Questions or comments from council? Seeing none, I'm open for a motion. Councilmember Tracy.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I move that we approve Bill for Ordinance number 18, series of 2022 on first reading.
I second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilmember Stein, whose microphone may not have been on. But any further discussion? Seeing none, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Dennehy,
Aye.
Schmisher,
Aye.
B. Smith.
Aye.
Stein,
Aye.
Tracy,
Aye.
Worthington,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Hi. Glenda, thank you for being here tonight. We do appreciate you being patient and sitting through all the sometimes tedium that we go through. And Councilmember Schmisher, thank you for being here, even though it is very late at where you are this evening. We appreciate you being here also. And with no further business, we're adjourned.